Hi everyone, it's Anthony Hartcher from Me&my Wellness. Today I'll be talking on the topic I'm very passionate about, and it's how to manage stress in uncertain times. So certainly there's a lot going on, and hence why I'm running this webinar today in terms of there's lots of stressors in our lives. Lives have been turned upside down in many ways, and wanting to provide you some useful resources that you can use every day to support your mental health as we navigate our way through this pandemic. So here we go. Without much further ado, I'll bring up some information about myself. So in terms of my background, I'm a clinical nutritionist and lifestyle medicine specialist. I didn't start my career there. I actually started my career as a chemical engineer and really enjoyed my career as that, but it wasn't what I was really passionate about. I've always had this underlying burning passion to look after myself, and I really wanted to share my knowledge and certainly get further knowledge by going back to university and getting another qualification. And now I'm doing what I love. I'm, sharing my knowledge and imparting my wisdom and helping others to become healthier in their lives. So this is one of the forums I use to help others. So glad you're on today and listening, and look forward to really helping you navigate through this pandemic. So in terms of, I'd like to cover firstly the implicating factors to mental health, and I've got here pretty much the 4 pillars that underlie mental health, and you need to have these pillars strong and balanced in order to have good mental health. So the first pillar here is autonomy, and so this is our ability to choose what we want to do. And in this pandemic, this ability has been somewhat shifted in the sense that we haven't got a say in what we do. We're pretty much directed by the government what we can and can't do. And so there's only so much control we have, and some of our control has been taken away from us. And that shift is difficult, and it certainly, really unbalances our 4 pillars. So that is something that I'll be certainly addressing, and in the forthcoming slides. The other one I've got here is social connection, and certainly through this pandemic, we have somewhat lost a bit of social connection, and we're finding other ways to have that social connection, such as through these online platforms. So we've got this physical distancing in place, and it's been difficult, particularly for those that live by themselves. And we've been going to other mediums to get that social connection. So certainly that's been disturbed. And so there's certain ways in which we can help get this back in balance, and I'll certainly be covering that in the forthcoming slides. The third one I've got here is stress, and I'm going to be covering this in a lot of detail because it's something we're encountering a lot of, and 2 of the above points were, are some of the stressors that have come into our lives, that loss of control, and also, I guess we've had somewhat limited social connection. So certainly we'll be addressing that and other ways in which we can manage our stress. So obviously it's going to be there in our lives, and I'll be talking about how can we help better regulate that stress. The 4th pillar here is our physical well-being. So this is what I refer to as, how we're nourishing our body, the activity, so the movement, being physical active, making sure we get enough sleep. And, I've got here also sunlight. So as much as we have been isolated in our house, it's so important that we get out and get outdoors. And so I'm going to be giving you some practical tips on how you can go about doing that and making sure you get the most out of it so that you have good physical health. So on that 3rd pillar, stress. So it's important that I actually define what it is, and and talk about it as to, yes, it is a part of our lives. It's not going to go away. what we can do about it is better manage it. And that's what I'm really going to elaborate in detail on in the forthcoming slides. So in terms of stress, it's basically the body's response to a stressor. And I'm going to cover up in the next slide as to what the stressors are, but it's our body, how it responds, how resilient it is to that stressor. And obviously, if we're in better health and have a better state of mind, we're more resilient to those stressors. So I'm going to talk about what they are, and we're going to also cover as to how can we make our body and our mind, our spirit, more resilient to these stresses. So yes, it is a normal part of life, and stress there's different types of stress, which I'll be covering certainly in the next slide. And so, yes, we do expect to have stress in our lives, and it certainly does drive us. It gives us momentum to move forward and to take action. But sometimes we can be overwhelmed by that stress, and that's not so great. So this is where I'm talking about building up your resilience to better tolerate the stress so that we are able to move forward and adapt to the stressors and better manage what stress we have in our lives. So, in terms of stress, it's set up as a survival mechanism. Our ability to manage that stressful event, we have this survival mechanism within us to deal with it. Our cells kick into this survival mode, and we're able to, like those stressors way back used to be threats, such as that tiger that we, had that life-threatening situation where we thought, well, we need to get away from the tiger. And so stress allows us to think quickly, respond quickly, and to get away from that threat. I think the problem, with these events, these major events such as pandemics, is that threat is around for much longer, and we need to learn to adapt. And the quicker we learn to adapt and find ways in which we can better manage the stress, and so it doesn't become such an overwhelming part of our lives, it helps us really go forward, make good decisions, and make the most out of a not so good situation, and look back and think about the positives of the situation in terms of what it's brought about. So in summary, stress is going to be there. It's always going to be in our lives. This talk is about how we can better adapt to it, be more resilient to it, and be able to live a life with stress in it, as opposed to stress overtaking it, overwhelming us, and we don't know how to adapt and cope. So the types of stresses I've categorized this in 3 areas. So it's the mental, emotional, and so that's our thinking, the manifestation of our thoughts, such as, when this first event first happened, everyone went into that, oh no, am I going to be stuck at home? So therefore I need to go out and shop and buy up everything and buy all the toilet paper and all those things. And that resulted in that panic buying, because that's our initial response is it's life-threatening. And so we went into that life survival mode, and it was, that very much the survival of the fittest, and people were getting into arguments at supermarkets because of, that they wanted what the other person had and they couldn't get it. And so this is that real survival animal instinct, life or death situation. Obviously, we've now moved on from that really panic stage, and we're now into, well, how do I better adapt to it? And that's what I'll be talking about today, is that adaptation. And this is going to be useful, obviously, coming out of this event in terms of you going forward into your everyday life, because these events do happen to us. We do lose loved ones in life. We do have significant work stress. We have relationship stress, and some of these other ones, such as, we can have a ailment in our body. So, the next point here is the physical stress. This is obviously if we've been under stressful situations for long periods of time, our body gets overwhelmed and it gets exhausted from running away from that tiger continuously without a break. It hasn't been able to do the maintenance phase of what it needs to do in terms of repairing cells, repairing organs, and rejuvenating. So when we're in stress for long periods of time, our body gets overwhelmed and we get into this run-down state. And this is what I'm referring to as physical stress. It's overexertion for too long. And you can get this through excessive exercising as well, or just being on the go, and not stopping. And that can be a result of we're really stressed, we're not coping well with it. And so we just keep doing. And eventually, if we could just keep doing without having rest and allowing the repair to the body, our body starts to break down. And this is where, disease manifests. The third point here I have is chemical stress. So these are the stresses in the coming, stressors coming from the environment, such as pollution, which is, a benefit of what's going on now is we're driving our cars less. There's less planes flying. So there's less pollution in the atmosphere. There's less people walking around dropping rubbish. So there's less, pollution on the streets that's then not flowing into the seas. So that has been a positive thing, is, where our environment's in a better state. However, going forward, when things start to pick up again, we'll have air pollution, you get bushfires and all that. So that's a stress to the body. There's also chemical stresses, such as the ones from foods, when they're sprayed with pesticides. So that's a stress the body has to deal with, like mercury in fish, for example. So tuna's been found to have, fairly substantial quantities, on unhealthy quantities of mercury. So that's a stress on the body, and the body needs to adapt and get rid of that chemical out of the body. So it can result in inflammation, and that inflammation, if it's constantly got that stressor, the inflammation just grows and grows, and we get that really inflamed state, such as we feel exhausted. Our body's been working hard to get rid of that chemical, and again we feel run down, and our body just doesn't function as well because that stress is constantly there. It's having to deal with it and manage it. So it's unable to do other things, such as repair, that I mentioned earlier. And there's also this other things we put in our body, such as recreational drugs, or alcohol, or medicinal drugs. So they're all, I guess over time become that burden on the body. And yes, I'm not saying don't, stop using your medication, but just acknowledging that that's an additional thing that your body needs to deal with. And if it's overloaded, with constant medication, as well as with alcohol and pesticides from fruit and vegetables, it starts to accumulate. And this accumulation results in this internal stress. And I like to, refer to that internal inflammation that's building up is like a fire. It's burning inside you that we need to dampen and put out. So we're going to go through ways in which we can put out and extinguish that inflammation, that fire inside us. So just to make you aware as to the types of stresses that are in our lives, they're not just all, emotional and mental. There's also those physical through us going, and there's those chemical stresses, that come from the environment. It also can be mold, so rising damp in the house is not good. That mold releases toxins into the atmosphere that we ingest. And there's also plastics. So, when we're eating out of plastic containers, microwaving with those plastic containers, that plastic does find its way into the food. And that's another chemical that our body's having to deal with. And it can become overwhelming if we're constantly loading our body with chemicals, that it's having to find a way in which it breaks it down and then get rid of it. So that's the type of stresses that we're constantly exposed to. How does our body respond to this? It either sees the stress as a good stress, what we refer to as eustress. So eustress are good stresses. And so I've listed some good stresses here. And so exercise is one of those good stress, but not excessive exercise. It gets back to that balance. Competing, for example. So wanting to better yourself, better a time, better your performance. That is a stress on the body, but it's driving you forward in a positive direction towards a positive outcome, to becoming a better human being, to constantly stretch yourself and allow yourself to grow. So that is a good stress. But obviously, when you're pushing yourself too much and wanting to grow too fast, too soon, that can become a not so good stress, which is that distress, distress, which I'm going to cover shortly. There's those deadlines that at work put onto us. It's important to have deadlines because we actually get things done, but racing towards that deadline can cause us not to allow enough time to relax and rejuvenate and repair. And so that constant going, it gets us going, which is good. So that getting us out of bed, getting us, delivering our purpose into society, such as helping society become a better place. That's a good thing. But if we're not allowing ourselves to find that balance between, delivering our purpose to the world, or living our purpose, and, allowing our body to rest and repair and rejuvenate, then that's when that can also flip and become distress. Watching a good movie, for example, so that thriller, it's suspense, it's holding us in suspense. That's, does allow us to then enjoy the outcome after that. So it's like a ride, in that ride, we go on to that amusement park ride where we go, down that dipper, and that, you really feel that, and you feel a bit stressed, but then afterwards you feel good. It's the endorphins that are being released. That's all fits in with, I guess, things that we get to choose to do. And when we choose these more positive, stressful events, we're in that better mind state to say, well, it's something I wanted to do, and we look forward to it. Whereas there's more distressful events, stressors, are things that generally are out of our control, such as a relationship that doesn't go well and someone's, picking on us or bullying us or not being kind to us. That's a disturbing stress. And then you've got those situations where you feel like you're being controlled in relationships, or in this situation with the pandemic, the government's telling us who can work and who can't work. And so that can be stressful and, a not so great stress. So there's these good stresses, which you can see that are very much related to the things we choose to do. And then the not so good ones are the ones we have got some little control, but it can be that constant stress that we feel that we're out of control. Because when I say we've got some control, we can choose the relationship we're in. We can choose the people we hang out with. Sometimes when you're in a work situation and you want the job, you need the income, you choose to stay in the workforce, but you can be under that bullying or that unhealthy relationship with your boss. So this is where we need to find the balance. Okay, so how do we find that balance? How do we get more adaptable to those stressors? First point is balance. So I touched on it before about, when we've got choice, we choose it, and therefore we should say, yes, I've chosen this career, I've chosen this place of work. I'm going to have to just adapt to these people that are around me that I might not fit in, or something like that. You might find ways in which you can become more like a chameleon and fit in better with the culture. Alternatively, your choice is to then leave that and find a culture that suits you, which is probably a more preferable choice. So we've got to find this balance between when we're getting overstressed and when it's becoming overwhelmed. That's when we need to reach for that balance. And that balance can be in all those facets I mentioned before. So that physical one is that go, 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 right? We might be choosing to go, 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 but then realizing, hey, there's other parts of my life that are being left behind or not being, I'm not putting back into, such as, it could be relationships, it could be spending time with friends, family, It could be I'm not doing exercise. I'm just constantly working. I'm not eating well. And so there's, these imbalances that are created through you just going and investing too much time into one area. So it gets back to looking at all the facets of your life, everything that's important to you, and making sure you're investing time into each of those areas. It might not be even time, and that's, this is balance. Perfect balance doesn't really exist, but you just need to be conscious that there's areas of your life that are being neglected that you need to put back into. So it's important you put those deposits back into those areas, such as those relationships. Otherwise, they will start to waver and go downhill if you're not investing back into those areas. You could be doing too much exercise, too much spending time with friends, and not enough focus on your career. And then that's obviously going to have effects on your career and your income. And so it's just constantly finding this balance, and it's constant working towards. It's not something you achieve. It's constant work in progress. So it's with that perfection. Balance doesn't exist. It needs constant working on and awareness. So first of all, we've created this awareness as to important to define those areas that are important to you. And then it's, where am I spending most of my time? And then where am I not spending enough time? And then putting aside time for those other areas that ain't getting the time they deserve. So on this example here, I've got this constantly going. So it could be constantly serving other people and not looking after yourself. And so you're always going, looking after family members, looking after your friends, but neglecting yourself. And so what that's going to do is limit your giving capacity long term, because if you're not giving back to yourself, not nourishing yourself, not looking after yourself, you will become run down and unable or have reduced capacity to look after others. And that could be your purpose, is looking after others, serving others. In order to best serve that purpose, you need to look after yourself. So it gets back to this balance. I think you get the idea as to what I'm talking about here, is always investing in all the areas that are important to you. So it's important you define those areas and then look at where you're spending your time, and then make sure you're doing something about that area that is important to you, but you're not doing much in. So the second point I have here is that point I finished on before, is if you're doing a lot for others and helping them through this time and not investing back into yourself, this is important that you do this, because it makes you more adaptable to stress. Because if you're constantly doing and serving others, that is creating lots of physical stress, because you're constantly going. And what you're not allowing yourself to do is relax and repair and rejuvenate and re-energize so that you can keep serving. So it's important that you put aside that time for you in doing things you love. And that will make you better able to serve others, better able to cope with another stress that may come into your life. So it's important that you always invest back into yourself and make yourself a priority. And remember, they always say on the aeroplane, to put your mask on first before you start putting on other masks onto other people. So you do need to serve yourself in order to best serve others. So I'm going to come up and certainly give you suggestions of how you can better do that self-care, better nourish yourself, so that you can be more adaptable to stresses that come into your life. And then the third point here I have is around helping with your body to adapt to stress, and that's being able to regulate the stress. So obviously a stress comes in, our body responds. There's an autonomic response, and that's that fight, flight, or freeze response. So that will get switched on. What we want is a balance between having that fight, flight, or freeze response switched on, to be able to switch that off, so our body can then repair. So the other response is the rest and digest response. And so that rest and digest response is where our body starts to repair, rejuvenate, and be able to better function as a result of having that maintenance done. So as you know, if you keep running your car and not taking it in for service, eventually that car will have problems. Our body's the same. We work the same. If we keep going, we don't rest, we don't have, adequate nourishment, in terms of food and, putting in good fuel into our body, then we start breaking down, and that's when chronic disease manifests. So I've listed some key areas here that allow us to turn on that rest and digest. So this is that vagus nerve stimulation. The vagus nerve is the one that goes to our vital organs and tells them to go into that state of repair, rejuvenation. So it tells the heart to relax, to calm down, not to beat as fast. Obviously, when we've got a stress, it starts beating faster. Same with our breathing. It helps slow our breath, get deeper breaths. And, when we're stressed, we tend to take shallower breaths, and more frequently, we're sort of gasping for the air. Now, we have massive demand for that oxygen when we're trying to get away from that tiger. So what we want to do is be able to tell those vital organs that everything's okay. That threat, that life-threatening situation may still be there, but I'm going to take control. I'm going to be better regulated so that I can go for this or manage this stressful situation for longer. As you know, this pandemic's not going to go away overnight. It's going to be around for quite some time. And so we need to be able to better cope with it. And so I've listed some points here as to what's important in terms of that rest, digest, rejuvenation, repair. I'm going to go into those in more detail. So the first point here is about creating resilience. Now, in our life today, well, certainly in the developed world, we have this quite an affluent lifestyle. Not everyone, but generally we're moving towards more affluence. We generally have more comforts in our world. We have the air conditioning, heated water. We've got, great sanity in terms of toilets, and, we have clean drinking water. So we've got all these things that make us feel very comfortable, and we're constantly seeking more comfort and buying more things that will help us be more comfortable. The problem is we get really comfortable with the comfort, and when something is introduced as uncomfortable, we struggle to cope with that because we're so used to having all the comforts around us. So one of the tips in terms of building resilience over time, and it's not, this doesn't happen overnight, it's just constantly investment into this area of building resilience, is by stepping out of that comfort zone and stepping into something that makes you feel a bit uncomfortable, but then being in that area or whatever you're doing and getting comfortable with it, so that the uncomfortable now feels comfortable. So that when discomfort comes into your life or some comforts are taken away from you, you're okay with that because you've built up this resilience. So what do I mean by, what are some examples of this? So, you think about that hot shower. We're constantly having hot water. We look forward to it, and we actually take it for granted because we just expect to turn the hot water on and it's there. So what I suggest, and it's also good for vagus nerve stimulation, is to have a cold shower every now and then, or part of your shower as cold. First of all, it makes you appreciate what it is like to have warm water and how it's available. So your gratitude to what you have around you becomes heightened, and you become more aware and more grateful. And that gives that higher sense of, I am aware of what I have in my life and I'm grateful for it, as opposed to being focused on that, what I don't have and what my neighbor has and I don't have. You're more focused on what you have and you appreciate what you have. So that's the first point. It makes you more appreciative of hot water. And by just having a little bit of cold shower, it certainly does the vagus nerve stimulation. So it just switches us off, so we become more heightened of our senses, for example, that, oh, this is cold, oh, and we become more in the present moment. It takes us into that present moment. And being in that present moment, we're not worried about the future or the past. We're just thinking, that's cold water. Where's this hot water? But if you take some deep breaths whilst under the cold, you start to assimilate to experiencing the cold, and it becomes okay, and it's not so bad, and you actually relax into it, and you need to allow you relaxing into it. So I suggest you start with just a small amount of time and ease your way into it. And as you find, you'll start with maybe 10 seconds, and then that grows to 20, 30, a minute, to the point where you could just have cold showers all year round and it doesn't faze you. So that's one of the areas in which you can, slowly step out of the comfort zone and become more comfortable with the uncomfortable. The other thing is hunger. So in today's world, we always have food around us. It's always available. In prehistoric times, food wasn't always around us. We had to hunt and gather for it. And so we had periods of hunger, but we adapted. That was just a norm of part of survival, that the body expected to have periods of hunger. Whereas now we get hungry, we go and get food because it's all around us, or we just go to the cupboard and grab some. So another way is to actually get comfortable with a bit of hunger, and having that little bit of hunger there is okay. I'm not going to starve and tell anybody it's okay. I can live with that. I know I've got food. I've got abundance of food around me. So that's another way in which you can get, comfortable with the uncomfortable. And I've got, in terms of my third point here is, turning on the air conditioning less, or the central heating less, or the heater less, and just becoming, adjusting more to the cold, just putting up with a little bit more cold. I'm not saying freeze yourself and get sick. I'm saying just allow that little bit of discomfort and sit with it and get comfortable with it. And one way of getting comfortable with it is just breathe into it and let go of the comfort and what it could be. Just accept it as it is. The fourth point I've got here is a vegetable box. So why a vegetable box? Because it challenges us. So essentially, we order this vegetable box. We don't know what they're going to put into it. They just put what's seasonal and what's fresh and what's available, and it arrives on our doorstep. And we look at it and think, oh, I haven't had that vegetable. I don't know what to do with it. But it makes us to think creative and think more in that survival adaptation way. Is, okay, I've got this vegetable, never eaten it, never tasted it, don't know what to do with it. I don't even know what it is. So maybe you start by Googling it, researching it, finding out what it is. What's good about it? How can you cook it? And what do you cook it with? And you start getting creative. You start getting more invested into your food, and you get more present and more grateful for the food. So I really suggest you could try one of the four, or come up with other ways in which you can step out of that comfort zone and get more comfortable with the uncomfortable, so that when uncomfortable events come into our life, we're just so used to dealing with it, and we know how to adapt and think, well, it's not as bad as having a cold shower, this event, or it's not as bad as having to put up with a bit of hunger or whatever. So we put things into perspective. And so I suggest you start doing this to become more resilient as a human being. So what are some ways in which we can get more mindful? And how do we incorporate that into our day? So I mentioned some ways in which you can get more mindful, and that's being, stepping out of your comfort zone, because you become more aware, because you essentially are into this situation where you haven't been into before, and you become, I guess, those senses get heightened. So, that cold shower, you think, oh, that's uncomfortable, but you start breathing and accepting it as it is, and you become more present because you just connected with the breath, and you can feel the cold water, and that cold water just becomes the norm of what's around you, and you actually go into that feeling of presence. So if we can find ways to take ourselves into the present moment. And it could be by having those sort of uncomfortable experiences, or it could be just more controlled, such as you controlling your breathing. So our breathing's autonomic. It just happens, and it's part of survival, right? We try to hold our breath, and then our body will automatically grasp for air at some point. So how about you could try controlling your breath in order to take control and focus on the breath, and then that becomes what you're focused on, and you become more mindful of the here and now, that you're breathing. We take it for granted, but focusing on it, that now I'm breathing, and what a wonderful thing is that I'm breathing, because if I'm not breathing, I wouldn't be here. And so, just drawing in that air and controlling the amount of air you take in, and you hold it in your lungs and then breathe out, and taking that control is telling the body that you're in control, telling the mind that everything's okay. You're not out of control. It's okay because I'm controlling my breath. And that just tells the body to relax. It switches on that vagus nerve. It tells all those vital organs to relax, the heart to slow down, the lungs to expand and accept all that oxygen. It tells the muscles to relax and become less tense. It tells your digestive system to relax and to start breaking down food. When we're in a stressful state, our digestive system is down-regulated. It's pushed aside, and we focused on just survival. So taking control of your breath is switching on, everything's okay. I can now rest and digest my food. And so this is important to incorporate mindfulness into your day, and particularly around eating, so that you can digest your food. So ways in which we can become mindful is, I've suggested a number of them. It is obviously engaging with our senses. So whether that be through the foods we're cooking, or playing with in terms of that new vegetable you've never seen before, or it could be you controlling your breath and being conscious of your breath. So it's whatever we're drawing our consciousness to, and focusing on that, and not thinking about the future or the past. So getting outside and exercising is a way in which, obviously, we're in nature. We're outside, we're in the elements, and we've got senses in terms of, we feel the sun on our skin. And doesn't that feel great when we've got the sun on our skin? The fresh air, and if we're exercising, we're moving and we're controlling our body, and we can be grateful for the movement. We can just be focused on getting into the rhythm of our movement, and that takes us into the present. Just being in nature brings us into the present moment by opening our senses to nature, by being aware of that bird singing, that wind going through the trees, and the trees rustling, just connecting to that sound. It's awesome. Watching the waves move in the ocean is therapeutic. Observing animals in nature is amazing. Watching bees fly around, watching ants move, watching birds fly around and interact, listening to their sounds. That's calming, it's relaxing, it creates mindfulness. When we're mindful, when we're calm, we're regulating our stress. So yes, get outside, do some morning exercise, and then obviously we'll get back to our day, and then it's we're activity. So that can induce some stressors. So it's important we find a outlet, and that could be lunchtime, getting outside again, getting in the sun, walking around in fresh air. It could be just having a break and making your lunch, preparing a salad. So that can be a way in which we can disconnect from what we were working on before and reconnecting with our senses again. And then after lunch, get back into your day, and then some more stresses are going to come. And so then it's having that evening routine, which I'm going to go through into more detail in a subsequent slide. Here it is. So your sleep routine is so important because this is where we can control our day, just like you can have a morning routine and control your morning, such as getting outside, exercising, having a nourishing breakfast. That's all in our control. It makes us feel that, yes, we're on top of the world and we're nourishing ourselves, we're looking after ourselves, everything's okay. My body can continue to repair and rejuvenate. So, what this routine is all about is getting us into a state of mind so that we can sleep and get restorative sleep. And so we need to have a lead up because we need to let the body know to start winding down. It can't wind down instantaneously. And this is the thing, with medicine today, we take a drug and we get a fairly instantaneous effect. And so we're always looking for that quick pill, that quick fix. However, our body doesn't respond like that. It takes time to produce the hormones, the neurotransmitters that are required to perform that function. The digestive enzymes need to be secreted from our digestive organs, such as our pancreas and our liver. It needs to, first of all, get the sensory. Our sensory receptors need to receive the signal from outside, such as the smell, such as looking at food, the taste, and then it's sending a signal to those organs. That takes time, and then the organs digest the digestive enzyme. So we need to allow time for our body to adjust, and this is what the sleep routine does. It's telling the body to start getting ready to wind down and get ready for a good night's sleep. So I suggest eating early. It's important to be, not feel heavy on your stomach. It's hard to eat with a full stomach. You're probably all well aware of that. And also, we don't want our body doing a lot of digestion while it's sleeping. We want the body to be repairing the digestive system. We want it to be repairing our organs that have been working so hard during the day. So yes, have an early dinner, and then after that dinner, start relaxing. You don't want to be getting back to work and creating more stimulus. The stimulus keeps the stress response elevated. We actually want to push down that stress response so that we can start having that more rest and digest response. So having a herbal tea, that chamomile tea, that relaxing tea, watching your favorite show, something that's light, that's not heavy, that's not stimulating. So having that relaxing time after dinner, allowing the food to digest, and then start minimizing lighting. So when our body's taking in a lot of light, it sends messages to the cells that it should be doing daytime functions. So if it's constantly seeing this blue and white light, then it's telling the cells to keep doing daytime functions, as opposed to sending a message to the cells that, oh no, there's no more daylight. Start doing nighttime functions, such as producing the hormones we need to sleep. So we need to dim the lights. That's putting on, some lamps, turning off those white fluorescent lighting, putting our electronic devices onto night mode, or disconnecting from them entirely. I suggest you totally disconnect from them, because it can be stimulus. You can be looking at how many likes you got from that post during the day. You can be looking and getting jealous of what your friends are doing and you're not doing. So taking away those stimuluses, reducing the lighting, playing some relaxing music. A great way of reducing lighting is light some candles. That's really therapeutic. And then playing some relaxing music. So music that brings you down, that relaxes you. So for me, that's listening to nature sounds, the waves breaking, the waterfall running, birds chirping, those relaxing, classical music. And then what I find a really useful way is that even in this process, there'll be thoughts that come into our mind. The best way to get them out of our mind and to get relaxed is to put them on paper. So as those thoughts come in, write them on paper. get them on that paper. You know you can address that paper tomorrow. Any emotions that are coming in, anything that's unsettling you, write it down, journal it, put it on that paper, take it out of your mind. And then with that writing exercise, I suggest at the end of it, you finish with gratitude. Because when we're looking for things to be grateful for, it makes us feel good because we have it. It's there in our lives. And the more we do this gratitude journal, you'll be looking for the small things in life that you would have overlooked previously. So, you know, there's things that happen in our day that we take for granted. And now you're doing a gratitude journal, you start digging deep as to the things you are grateful for, and you start finding the little things that you're grateful for. And that's great because when you switch that, you have that heightened awareness towards that act of gratitude, you then start experiencing it during the day, and you start feeling that gratitude during the day, and it makes you feel good. You feel in control. You feel that life's fantastic and there's so much love and support and kindness and generosity. So gratitude journaling is a great thing because it heightens our awareness towards appreciation of what we have and not focus on what we don't have. Having a bath or a shower can be really nice. You know, like an Epsom salts bath with some essential oils. And this is a time, if you're not having a bath, you're not having a shower because you do that in the morning, then just, you know, allowing some time for you in the darkness. And for me, I like, you know, doing some rolling, you know, so that getting that roller and rolling out the muscles, telling the muscles to relax, because then they send a signal to the brain that if they're now less tense, then everything must be okay. I mustn't need to get away from that tiger anymore. So doing the rolling, a bit of stretching, light stretching, really to start sending more and more signals to the brain. It's time to relax. And your body begins to get into this routine, and it starts unwinding itself in autopilot as a result of being consistent with this routine. So you find it easier as you go. And then getting in bed before 10 is ideal after you've done all this relaxing. Obviously, no point of stimulating yourself and then jumping into bed and expecting to fall asleep, because as I said, the body takes time to adjust. You need to allow that time to adjust. You know, there's no quick fix. It's working with the body, allowing it to produce the things it needs to do in order to fulfill that function. So why getting into bed around 10? What research has shown between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. is where we get the most restorative sleep. So it's important that you're focused on getting some of that restorative sleep. And if you get all of it, it's fantastic. And you'll find you get up earlier because you've got that restorative sleep. Your body's rejuvenated, it's re-energized, and you get up with bursting of energy. You don't need that morning coffee. It's now an option. It's not a necessity. So have a go at this routine. Let me know how you're going. If you've got any challenges, I can certainly help you personalize it. Now, what can I do to nourish my body so it can then produce all the signals to allow my body to digest, to relax, rejuvenate, repair, to better adapt to the stress? In stressful times, these are the vitamins and minerals, the micronutrients that you want to be fulfilling your body with, because it helps our body be more adaptive to stress. So these vitamins and minerals that I've got listed here on the screen are ones that the body needs in order to execute that stress response. So it needs B vitamins. Where do I get those B vitamins? You get them from nuts, seeds, grains. You can also get them from animal products. The reason why I've listed the plant-based products is because we eat too much animal products. We need to eat more plant-based. So start looking for plant-based sources of nourishment. Same with vitamin C. Well, you're not going to find it in animal products. It's in plant-based products. It's particularly high in capsicum, kiwi fruit, and oranges. Oranges are now coming into season. Kiwi fruits are coming into season. So you'll find them in the supermarket. You'll find them in the boxes. If you buy that vegetable box, fruit and vegetable box, you'll find these in there. Mandarins. Magnesium. Magnesium's essential for around 300 chemical reactions that go on in the body. Same with zinc. I think zinc's around that 200 at least reactions. So magnesium and zinc are so essential to the body. And magnesium is, you'll find, in dark leafy greens. So the darker that leafy green, the more magnesium. So get into them. They're in season at the moment. So if you buy that box, you'll get plenty of these kale, these Brussels sprouts, cabbages, broccoli, all those things. Dark leafy greens, high in magnesium, and nutritious because they're seasonal. And if you buy from the local farmers, it's got the utmost amount of nutrients. So the closer the supply chain is to you, or the source is to you, the better. The longer it sits in storage is where the nutrients decline over time. So zinc, I've got pumpkin seeds listed here. They're a fantastic source. As I mentioned at the start, shift more towards plant-based food and nutrition because we don't have enough in our Western diet. You really want to be having at least around that 2/3 of your plate of plant-based nutrition, and that 2/3 predominantly of vegetables, fruit, that 1/3 of carbohydrates and proteins. So carbohydrates, your whole grains. So that's your grains, nuts and seeds, legumes, essentially. Or it could be a bit of meat. Again, you don't need a lot of meat, just your palm size is adequate, depending on what your goals are. But for general people, just that palm size is more than sufficient in terms of the amount of meat. You want to be having more fish and having that fish as oily as possible. So the sardines, mackerel, salmon, the good oily fishes that have the good omega-3s, which is great for your mental health. Other omega-3 sources are your chia seeds, your walnuts, flax seeds. So they're really good sources of omega-3s on top of your fish, oily fishes. And ultimately, go for color in the vegetables and fruit. Diversify as much color as possible. That means you're maximizing the range of nutrients, also the range of that nourishment for our friendly bacteria. So we need to feed that friendly bacteria. You've probably heard of gut health, the importance of gut health for our overall health. To nourish that good gut health, we want to have diversity, nuts, seeds, legumes, plant-based products to really help that microbiome flourish and stay balanced. So, in summary, get out there, get sunlight. Vitamin D has been found deficient in those with mental health challenges. So making sure you're getting out, getting some natural sunlight every day is important during isolation, and you're allowed out to exercise, to walk. So get outside, do that, get in the sunlight. And this time of the year, it's not those real harmful, hot, unbearable conditions. It's real nice conditions this autumn time. So movement, as I said, exercise is vital, but not too much, just enough. So around 30 minutes per day is good for general health and well-being. 30 minutes to 60 minutes is ideal. Do something per day is fantastic. Nutrition, as I mentioned that before, making sure it's lots of variety, well balanced. Mindfulness, doing a bit throughout the day, and I mentioned some mindfulness techniques. Incorporating them throughout your day, for the reasons to better manage your stress levels and staying on top of your stress. Getting a good night's sleep makes us more resilient to the stressors in our lives because we're in a more resourceful state, a better mood to deal with them. And as I mentioned, that getting comfortable with a bit of uncomfort, and I've talked about that in detail. So a little bit of discomfort's good, and if we keep doing that over time, we get really comfortable with uncomfortable events. So we're better, more resilient. And this all encompasses everything with balance is so important. So I really, truly thank you so much for your time today and attending this webinar. You can find me on these social media platforms. So you can find me on my web address is here, my Instagram page, my Facebook page. I'm constantly posting, constantly uploading videos, doing podcasts, sharing them. So yeah, certainly connect with me, stay connected. I'd love to keep serving you and keep educating you so you can be healthier. And that's my mission, is to enhance and enlighten the well-being of others. For those that attended today's discussion, so this is my free gift to you, and it's a free 15-minute session of how I can tailor what I've spoken about to your circumstances. So feel free to contact me by emailing me, and I'd love to give you my time to help better serve you, better tailor my tips to what you're going through. So thank you so much, and I really appreciate your attendance. It's been a gratitude, a massive appreciation on my behalf in serving you and helping you be healthier. So go out, spread the kindness, spread the generosity, and do good. Look after yourself, and the world will be a better place. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you attending today's webinar.